welcome to part 5 of the Circuit Playground Express introduction. Today we're going to be talking about sensors. So the past couple of videos we've been talking about how to turn the lights on and off using some basic programming techniques like if and else and for loops and lists. But one of the most important things if we're talking about electronics, and especially if we're using hardware, we need to talk about sensors. So first of all, let's talk about where the word sensors comes from and what sensors actually do. So the human body actually has tons of sensors, and you guys obviously are using those all the time. So if we talk about senses in humans, we have sense of touch, taste, smell, eyesight, and hearing, right? So we have all of these senses on our bodies, and we can use a lot of those senses in our electronics. They might look slightly different than they look in the human body, but it is important to realize that they do the same thing. They basically give our electronics feedback about the world around them. So we talked a little bit in our first video about the sensors that are on this board, but let's take a look at those again. So for example, we have our temperature sensor right here, our sound sensor here, we have our light sensor here, we have buttons and switches, which also count as sensors, right? They are sensing if the button has been pressed or the switch has been slid. There are also those capacitive touch sensors along the edge. So we have a ton of sensors on here. And the one that we're going to start with today is that light sensor. So it's a little bit different than our eyes, right? Our eyes create this whole image of the world around us. But what we're going to use this light sensor to do today is create an automatic flashlight. Okay, so one of the most important things to do when you are starting a programming project is decide exactly what you want to happen. If you don't know what you want to happen in your code at the beginning, it's going to be really hard to kind of figure it out as you go along. A little bit of pre-planning will save you a lot of grief. So let's talk about what we want our automatic flashlight to do. Okay, automatic means, well, when it's dark, then I want my light to turn on, right? And then if it's light in the room, I want my light to turn off. Pretty simple, takes 30 seconds, but doing that little bit of extra planning is going to be super helpful. All right. So the next thing we need to figure out is, well, how do we make our code do that? Well, the first thing we're going to need to do is figure out how to make our board talk back to us, because we need to know what the light levels are in the room. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to our code. If you have been working through the videos, then we're going to comment out all the code we've done so far below this cpx.pixels.brightness line. So I'm going to take these 3 single quotes and I'm going to move them up right there. You can also create a new comment block and block out this set of code separate from the earlier code, but I like to kind of have it in one huge block. So now we are back at really just our starter file is running, because remember, commented code doesn't actually run. And I'm going to start off by using a print statement. Now, a print statement is super useful because it lets our computer, our board, talk back to us. So I'm going to have it print, "Hi there." And what's going to happen is if I have to open up my serial monitor for this to work, and then I press save, assuming my board is connected correctly. Let's try that one more time. Sometimes, if you're not seeing things in the serial monitor, it helps to just disconnect and reconnect it. And this was working just a moment ago. There it goes. All right, so we have, "Hi there." So our board is sending information out to our serial monitor so we can see what's going on. Now, writing notes to yourself is fun, and it actually can be really useful in your program, but what we're going to do right now is, rather than just printing things that we want it to say, which you have to have these quotation marks around if you want it to print, we are going to print the value of our sensor. Now, we like things to be obvious in programming, right? Just like print prints things out, the way that we access our sensor is also going to be fairly obvious and hopefully makes sense. So we are getting that value from our CPX, our Circuit Playground Express. So just like to to access the pixels on our board, we do CPX.pixels. We're going to type CPX first to tell it, hey, we want this thing from the board. And the light sensor is going to be called light. So CPX.light. Hopefully that makes sense. Now if I press save, what it should do is print out the value of the light sensor. So if I hit save, now it says 64. Cool, so the light is 64 in the room, but I don't know what that means. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand and cover up my board. Specifically, the light sensor is here, and you can just cover kind of that area if you would like. But we're going to kind of change the light that this board is sensing and press save again. And now the light in the room is 4. So cool. It seems like the more light there is, the higher the number. To test it one more time, I'm going to take a little flashlight, and I'm going to shine it right over the sensor. Whoop. And then I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to press save. Whoa, 312. Okay, we were definitely right. The higher the amount of light in the room, the higher the number. And hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes you might get a sensor where it's flipped the other way, though. Now, every time I want to see this value, I have to press save. And then I get one value of the exact moment I press saved. But that's not really what I want. If I'm going to make this automatic flashlight, it has to be able to like detect the light in the room like in an ongoing way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this code repeat. Remember how we do that. Take a second. Okay, loops, right? We want to use a loop to make this happen. And we could use a for loop, right? If we scroll down into our code, that's why we're keeping it here, so we can look back at it. Then I can make it run a certain number of times. Or I can do a while true loop, which is just going to make it go forever. In this case, I just want, as long as my light is on, as long as it's been turned on and plugged in, I want it to, or sorry, as long as my board is plugged in, then I want it to keep doing this. So I'm just going to use a while true loop here. And remember, don't forget your colon and don't forget to tab in. And then we'll press save and whoa, okay. So don't do what I just did. Do you see how fast it's going? 1, that's really hard to read, and 2, it could make your board crash. So I always forget this. We want to include a time.sleep. So basically make it easier to read. So I'm going to do time.sleep 0.2, and this is also going to prevent our code from accidentally crashing. So now I can actually read what's going on here. I can see 65, 64, okay. So we can see it's fluctuating a little bit. And between boards, you may see that somebody else's board in the same place might have a slightly different reading, and that just has to do with calibration, which is basically where the board has 0 set as. But what's going to happen is if I move, I'm just going to pass my hand over this, and whoa, we can see those numbers drop and then go up higher. And then if I go a little closer, then it goes really low, and then as I lift my hand, it comes back up. You can't see what I'm doing, but hopefully you understand what is happening. Okay, cool. So now I have this thing that is going, and I can see the light value in the room, and if I use my flashlight, I can make it go up really high, really fast. Whoa, yes, you should definitely be able to see that light turn on and off. So the next part of this is going to be figuring out how to use that light value that we have. So anytime that you want to do something with the light value, you just type cpx.light. And we want our code to make a decision. So does anybody remember how we have our code make decisions? We use if and else, right? So we go here. Remember, we did this whole thing where it was deciding which color to turn our lights based on which light was on using the x value from our 4x and range loop. Well, this time we are going to use the value of cpx.light to determine whether or not our light is on or off. So what I want you to do is start out by deciding what number you want to be on and what number you want to be off. So for example, in mine, if I shine a light on it from a little bit further away, an easy way to control the numbers to move your flashlight up and down like this, that will change the amount of light that it's actually detecting pretty easily, right? So I'm going to say, okay, well, for me, I'm going to pick, like 100 maybe as the place where the light is on versus off. Because that's like a reasonable amount of light. But you might choose something like 50. The ambient light in this room you can see is probably around 60. I'd say like you could put it like 40 to be safe, to really make sure it's always detecting that even if a shadow kind of goes over it. But you can choose whatever number you want to be the place where it changes. And that is how you are calibrating your flashlight, just like the sensor is calibrated with a place at 0. So we're going to go in here and we're going to make our if statement. And you're going to say if cpx.light is something, don't just copy my code blindly. I'm going to leave some things blank in here. Is something, right? So you need to finish this statement and say maybe it's greater than, or maybe it's less than, or maybe it's equal to something. Remember, we do 2 equals if we want to say it's equal. Then, and here's where you would write what you would want to happen. You can turn on lights individually. You can turn on all of the lights using cpx.fill. Remember, instructions for doing that are up here. But one thing to keep in mind is with your board, the light sensor is right here, which is right next to a light. So if you turn on all of your lights, you may have issues with the light from your board impacting the light amount that your board is sensing. So I would start by picking one light, ideally on this side of the board, to turn on and off. Make sure that works, and then move towards turning other lights on and off. Hopefully that makes sense. So right here in your code, you're going to finish this statement, and then you're going to say, what do you want to happen? So pick which lights you want to turn on, pick which color you want them to turn on. So there's your if statement. Remember, you always want an else to go with your if. So once you've filled in this statement, so this will be what you want to happen. This will be some condition. Then you are going to do your else statement. So else does not have a condition. So it's just the leftover things. And so what happens otherwise? So if this isn't true, then your else statement will run. If you'd like, you may also add in an elif statement, which does get a condition. And then what you want to happen. But for this, we just have 2 main states, on and off, so you can just do, you don't necessarily need this. You don't need your elif statement, but you will need an if and an else statement at minimum. Go ahead and give that a try. All right, if you're back, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do if cpx.light is less than 100, then it means, I'm going to say that means it's dark. So I'm going to do cpx.pixels, and I'm going to turn pixel, I can't remember which side that's on. I'm going to try pixel 9 equals white. And if it is not on, or if it is not dark, then I want it, sorry. If it is greater than 100, right, if this is not true, then I'm going to want to turn this off, because that means that it is bright in the room. And I can even add some comments here to make this make a little bit more sense. So I can say, like, for when it is light in the room, and here I can say for when it is dark in the room. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So what's going to happen is now I'm watching, and my light is on right now because it is less than 100, and I'll show you that. So it's on, and if I shine my light on this, do you see how that light goes off? And my number is greater than 100. So on, off, on, off. Woo! The less of a time.sleep you have right here, the more immediately it's going to react. This is what's slowing down your code, but you do need it, because if you have no time.sleep at all, your code has a chance of totally freaking out. You can also, if you want, do graded light. You can make the light come on in a graded way. So basically, if we do cpx.light is less than, let's say, so say it's less than 50, right? So if it's less on, then instead of just turning on 1 pixel, I'm going to turn on 2. And that also means I need to make sure I turn off 2. So if we go over here and save it, and then go back to our board. Right now, there is 1 pixel on. If I cover up my, oh, you know what? I messed up my order. So here's another example of making sure your order makes sense. So this isn't working right now. My pixel is less than 50, or my light sensor, but it's still not turning on that second light, and it's because I have done these in the wrong order. basically, if it's less than 100, it is also going to be less than 50. So this one is never going to trigger. So I'm going to actually move this line up here and change this to 50 and this to 100 so that it will run the way. Sorry, I forgot to show you what I was doing in my code. Basically, I moved this line up to the higher if statement because, well, here, I'm just going to Control Z so you guys can see. Right, so my code looked like this. But if it's less than 100, the light rating, it is also less than 50, so it's never going to get to checking this because remember, it checks them in order, and it only checks the next one if the first one isn't true. So I'm going to move this one up here, and I am going to change this to 50 and this to 100 so that hopefully it works. Okay, so let's go back over to our board. Oh, okay, so now it's less than 50, right? And so that second light is on. And let's see, if I put my flashlight on just a little bit, I'm bringing it closer. I made another error in my code. I forgot to turn this one to off, so it's staying on forever. Okay, great. So now we have both on. It should be above 50 now, so it should be changing. Oh, you know what is actually going to happen? We need to make sure that if it doesn't get to the else statement, it's still turning off that 8th pixel. So in our elif statement, I still need to turn it off. And you guys might be thinking, why is she showing us all these mistakes? It's because I think it's really important to understand that even when I'm writing code and I know how to do this, I still make mistakes sometimes, and it's important to figure out how to debug those errors. If you're just starting out, it's going to take you longer to find those errors than it takes me, so be patient. All right, so now we're here. And you can see it's kind of flashing on and off because sometimes it's below 50 and sometimes it's above. So if I kind of cover my sensor, they're both going to turn on. And if I let it go, it's just going to be one kind of blinking. And then if I shine my light on it, then I bring it closer. At some point, it'll go above 100 and they'll both turn off. Woo! It works! Another really fun way to play with this is instead of using turning pixels on and off, you can turn all of the pixels on and then play with the brightness and have it kind of fade on over time. But this is a nice, quick, and easy way to get started with an automatic flashlight. So hopefully you have an automatic flashlight working right now. You're welcome to obviously keep playing with this, get more lights to turn on, see what happens if you turn them all on, see how it affects your sensor. But you just made a piece of code that senses the light in the room and then turns on automatically based on that light. Nice work. See you next time.